So recently there's been a rumor going around that Bayonetta 3 will be announced and it's in development and blah blah blah. And I'm gonna tell you why I don't think this is true in the slightest.
Kill my wickedness, can the last point deny the subject? In this stay alive, cycle, she tap the left hand. Kill my wickedness, it's cooking to the ghost table. And will burn myself alive, have liberty, starting now.
If we're talking about just the Wii U version, okay? If we're talking about there being a Wii U version of Bayonetta 3, it's not gonna happen. I can say this wholeheartedly. If we look at the sales of Bayonetta, the original, on the PS3 and Xbox 360, it sold a total of over 2 million, about 2.2 million combined. If we're taking it individually, the first Bayonetta on PS3 sold 1.9 or 1.2 million, and the first Bayonetta on 360 sold about 1 million. What this is saying is that let's combine these first two totals, okay? That's 2.2 million. It's around 2.2 million in total sales right now, okay? Just for the first game of the franchise or whatever for the PS3 and 360. The Wii U version of, Bayonetta 2 has sold 900,000. Which means that the fan base for the game essentially dropped from 2.2 million to 900,000. And maybe it wasn't the whole fan base that dropped, it was just the fact that it was on the Wii U. But the thing is, it's selling less. People didn't fund Bayonetta, like Platinum. Let's get this straight. Bayonetta 2 was funded because of Nintendo. Microsoft, Sony, they didn't want to fund the game. So if it wasn't for Nintendo, Bayonetta 2 wouldn't have even been made. Why the hell would Microsoft and Sony fund Bayonetta when they've seen how unpopular it is comparatively now? It was never popular to begin with, but now it's even less popular than it was before. So why would they want to fund a game that would not make them, pretty much any fucking money? You know what I'm saying? And now, if we're going to the fact that this is going to be a Nintendo exclusive, this would be on the Wii U or the NX, it didn't make Nintendo a lot of money either. It sold less than the original did, meaning the amount of people, in the fan base, if we're just, taking the first Bayonetta combined and then dropping to the second one, that's a 1 million drop in people that played the game. The fan base didn't sell that well on the Wii U either. It's about to get to 1 million, and don't get me wrong, 1 million is a feat, but it's 1 million after the game has sold. So if we're doing this comparatively, yes, Bayonetta 2 is outpacing the other versions that were on the PS3 and 360, but it's not successful enough to warrant a third edition of the franchise, especially since Nintendo most likely will have to fund it again. Even though Platinum is putting out games, they haven't had a gigantic success story, thanks to The Legend of Korra or the Transformers game. They haven't had any type of thing that would, print out money for them. So there's no real way that it seems as if they'd be able to fund the game by themselves. They'd need somebody else, to help them fund the game again. And Sony, Microsoft, and it looks like Nintendo would never do that because of looking at how it's sold. Bayonetta is not a major seller. Is it somewhat popular? I guess. I mean, it's sold damn near 1 million on the Wii U, but I don't think that it's plausible at all that Bayonetta 3 would happen, at least not on the Wii U. Now on the NX, maybe as a launch title, because as I said before, Bayonetta 2 is outpacing the other ones, the original Bayonetta on the other two consoles. So it is a possibility that it could happen on the NX, because the NX will need some game when it launches. But for the Wii U, they'd just be taking a loss. Everybody would be taking a loss. There'd be no point. Even though Wii U sales have increased, that apparently doesn't mean much, because the game is still not past 1 million, which means barely 10% of the people who own a Wii U, if that, own Bayonetta 2. So I don't think that it's not probable. I mean, like, it's possible, but it doesn't make sense for Nintendo to come out with Bayonetta 3 on the Wii U when it's comparatively a failure, even though it's outpacing the other versions. Sales-wise, it's a failure. And we all know, for a fact, Bayonetta 10 years down the line is not going to have sold an extra 1 million. The beginning of a game's life cycle, you know, that first month, is when the game sells the most. If it's not past 1 million now, and the Wii U is dying, what the hell makes you think Bayonetta 2 is going to sell like 2 million and beat the original on the PS3 and 360? Doesn't make much sense. Now for the NX, like I said, maybe, because they wouldn't necessarily be taking a loss depending on how successful the NX is going to do. So maybe not a launch title, but maybe a couple of years down the line when the NX is out and it's doing well, I could see it. If the NX does not start off well, no, it won't happen. But it's completely... Bayonetta 3 basically is reliant on whether the NX sells at the beginning of its life cycle really well or not. Because if it doesn't, Bayonetta 3 is probably not going to happen. Because now Nintendo also has experience with Sony and Microsoft experience in that this series is not as popular as people make it seem. And so it's not going to sell like people make it seem. That's all I gotta say. Bayonetta 3 on the Wii U will not happen. The NX, it's dependent on how well the NX sells. But that's what I think. Tell me what you guys think. Some of you will probably disagree. Most of you will probably disagree. But this is just a rumor that I had heard. I heard it from Neo Nexus. He said that everybody was talking about it. It's not going to happen, folks. Just start thinking about the sales numbers. A game will not be produced if at least a sequel for a game will not be produced if the first two games were not as popular as you thought. Nintendo thought that Bayonetta 2 would give them their console some type of spark, and it clearly hasn't. So tell me what you guys think. You guys will probably disagree. I don't think it's going to happen on Wii U. Maybe it will on NX. Maybe. Deuces.